We are here. It's December in the hat. Open mic. Everybody give it up for Mike Ham.
Thank you. Holy shit, this PA's turned the fuck up. Let's rock! Woo! We're gonna tell some fucking jokes and shit. Oh, that is spicy. So let's see here. Get my list of jokes. All right. Well, it's December now, so when I was a kid, I don't think I really discovered. Ooh, that.
Is it no good?
We might have to turn it down just a smidge. It kind of squeaks. All right, that's way better. Okay. So, when I was a kid, I don't think I really understood what the meaning of Christmas was to me because waiting for presents seemed stupid because I was super spoiled. And Santa Claus seemed like maybe a creepy character. But I think when I really understood what the true meaning of Christmas was to me is when I realized that it was super funny to get really high and run people's Christmas decorations over in their lawns with my Gran Torino. Now, before you judge me, the first time I realized it was funny, I accidentally ran over people's Christmas decorations and realized how funny it was. But let me tell you, the first 8 feet before the extension cord unplugs from their house is exhilarating. Yeah, so last minute shopping is just around the corner because I never do anything on time. And there's basically two kinds of people who give gifts. Those who are thoughtful and do it ahead of time, and then me, or people like me. But the last really bad gift I gave was for my 5th wedding anniversary, which, as you know, if you're informed of such things, is supposed to be something made of leather or wood. But if you're me, you might think it's a better idea to get your wife 18 fucking Care Bears you bought from a hooker you were smoking crack with all night in Denver. Which would be funnier if I didn't have a closet full of 18 fucking Care Bears at my house still. Alright. So, the next bit is about hoopties. Anybody ever drive some shitty fucking cars that lives here in Leadville? Woo! Let's give it up for shitty fucking cars. Yeah, I think the key is you really just need to have a sense of humor to drive a piece of shit. Otherwise, you'll want to kill yourself. So, that goes a long way. But the first car I had when I moved here was a 91 Saab Turbo. That didn't go into reverse and had a primer gray hood. And I bought it for like $800 off Craigslist. And that shit was awesome. One day I was driving my Saab and the muffler came undone and started dragging on the ground. So I took it to the shop now where they just do oil changes and tires. And they like tied it up with one strand of baling wire for me. So then 2 days later it started dragging on the ground again. So then I climbed under there myself and I tied it up with like some coax cable from my TV. And that lasted for like 4 days. But turbo car's exhaust kind of hot and it melted through and eventually it was dragging on the ground again. So I just called my friends and I said, hey, you guys got a fucking Sawzall? And they were like, we sure do. And I'm like, cool, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And they said they could hear me coming from like 8 blocks away because my muffler was dragging on the ground. So I just reached underneath and cut the son of a bitch off as far back as I could reach without jacking the car up. And so then I got this terrific mix of sounds going forward, which was like a vacuum leak and an incomplete turbo hit, and then the combination of the exhaust pipe bouncing between the ground and the bottom of the car as you haul ass. It was terrific. It was kind of like tank, 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 tank. Anyway, yeah, I love that car, and at one point, if you know Saabs, they have the key that's in the console next to you. And that's a safety feature, so when you're in an accident, you don't bang your knee on it and fuck yourself up, because the Swedes are very thoughtful. But what they didn't think about is if you spill a drink in the center console of your car, then your key will never come out again. So, that's not really a big deal, but one day I tried to pull my key out and the entire ignition cylinder came out with it. This created a problem for me until I figured out I could start my car with a screwdriver. But with no dome light at 5 in the morning going to drive to Vail, that shit is difficult because the little notch it fits in is this wide. So I ended up taking a steak knife and breaking it off with a pair of pliers, and it sat right in the barrel. And then I had an anti-theft anti-theft system as well. One, if you tried to steal my Saab, I could stab you with a blunt knife. And two, I could hide the knife under the seat so you couldn't steal my Saab. Anyway, that ride was great. But I graduated to other hoopties. I bought this Jeep, and it was like $1,500 or something. And it was one of the V8 Grand Cherokees. Anybody ever have the XJ Jeep? All right. Well, there's not a lot of people here, so that was a slim chance anyway. But the nice feature of this particular Jeep, there was two. One got worse because of the other, but it would vibrate from neutral into reverse without warning. So one day I discovered that because I was pumping gas and I heard a clicking sound, and then it backed up and bent the shit out of the door against the concrete partition, which was great because it didn't crush me. But it wasn't so great because then my door never closed again. But that's okay, I'm industrious. I put a bungee cord to the other door. So when I took right-hand turns, it just kind of flapped a little bit. But that was okay. I got better at it, because my tool skills they're better now, but when I first moved to Leadville, I was a young man, I was like 24, and I didn't really know anything, so I was just making it up as I went. But I got a bathroom privacy lock, one of the deadbolt kinds, and I just put it between the A-pillar and the door, so I could roll down the window and bolt action myself into that son of a bitch. But the thing was, I worked at the mine at the time, which was hilarious because I was on the safety team as a member of security, and I just had this vehicle that was grossly unsafe. But the last straw for that particular Jeep was the fact that I was warming it up in the morning. We used to get to park our cars in the scale house where we weigh the semi-trucks. And because it's facing 91 and my car vibrated into reverse, I had to run and catch it before it backed into morning traffic going down 91 to Copper. So I thought maybe I shouldn't drive that car anymore. I ended up selling it to my neighbor, which was hilarious because then his mom lived in it in front of his house. And I was just thinking, how many people at 18 years old can just buy their mom a crib for $350? That's some rapper shit. So, that was the Jeep. But then I bought this Volkswagen Golf out of Fairplay for $600. And that thing was fantastic. The speedometer was so off that it would say 100 miles an hour when you were going 40. But it wasn't really a big deal because I didn't even think it could go 65. The only time I ever even had cops flash their lights at me was going downhill past BV. I guess somehow I exceeded the speed limit. I wouldn't have known. The speedometer said 100 miles an hour for the past 2 hours, which is how long it took me to drive the Golf to BV. Anywho, the only thing funnier than driving hoopties is selling hoopties. Because not only do you get to make the most awesome Craigslist ads since you don't give a shit, but you also, selling a car for less than $1,000, you get to meet a very interesting subsect of society. These are people you wouldn't normally encounter outside of a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. Well, I assume. I've never been. But, maybe I'm stereotyping a little there. But there was this dude who ended up buying the golf from me, and I knew him as Brokeback Josh. And the reason I knew him as Brokeback Josh is my partner, when I was a security guard at Climax, was this big lesbian girl named Brittany. And this fellow Josh was trying to get with Brittany, but I guess she ended up getting with him, and he cried. And that's why when she told me that, I started calling him Brokeback Josh. Not to his face though, because he's much bigger than me. So, anyway, he answered my ad on Craigslist for the golf. And it said basically, it had a picture of my cat sitting in the car. And it said at the end of the ad, as you can see, it's compatible with cats. Cat not included. But if you don't try and lowball me, you can keep the ski rack that's on there. And it was listed for $900. You bring your own battery, because the battery's dead. This dude showed up to buy it, and I realized that the only thing better than selling a shitty used car is selling a shitty used car to someone you don't even fucking like. And so I basically told him, he tried to install the battery. It's funny because he like came with his toolkit and shit, and he forgot to take the negative terminal cover off so it wouldn't start, and we tried to jump it, and it smelled like burnt plastic and all that sort of thing. And he was like, well, what's wrong with it? I'm like, I don't fucking know. And then I saw it, I'm like, oh, well, you put the negative terminal over the plastic thing, so it's not going to start. And then we get it fired up, and I'm like, hey, man, just so you know, this bitch is going to want some coolant a lot. And a lot includes now. And so he didn't want to turn it off to put coolant on. But like, we let it idle, you know, and it won't come out of the parking space. So I have my neighbor drag me out with his diesel truck and like a climbing rope. And we go to Safeway where this dude is parked. We're going to switch, right? And I was like, we have it in the Safeway parking lot, and there's steam coming out from under the hood. And he's like, whoa, what's wrong with it? And I'm like, well, you know when I told you we should add coolant? You didn't. So like, make a mental note of that. You're going to do this in the future. And so I like took a gloved hand and undid it and added coolant and shit. And he kept like saying your car. And I'm like, well, I mean, I still have your $800 fucking dollars, right? Like, isn't this your car? And yeah, so he gave me $900 in 20s. And like, I literally was like, all right, cool. Well, he's like, his work truck was parked up at the Safeway, or we went up there so we could park his work truck at the Safeway, and he could drive the Golf away. So like, anyway, I drove it up there, and like, we switched, and I just remember pulling up with him in this car at the end of my driveway, and I get out and I'm like, hey man, just a reminder, I hope this thing lasts super long for you, but it is as is, so if you don't make it back to BV, don't fucking call me. And he did end up making it back to BV, but someone saw it broke down on the side of 91 like 4 days later. So I thought that was pretty funny. That, yeah. When I told my partner Brittany about that, she said, damn, Mike, you sold him it for that and it broke down that quick? Apparently we both fucked this dude in the ass. Alright, so the last story I have about hoopties involves a particular Mitsubishi Montero that I procured. Yes. But the setup for the Montero happens to be that my friend Tomas, or my wife's friend Tomas, I helped him buy his first used car in America. He went, like, literally, Jeanette comes to me and she says, Mike, will you help Tomas buy a used car? He's looking for one. And I'm like, oh, well, I love buying used cars. Of course I'll help him. He's from the Czech Republic. And so we go to look at this fucking Lumina in Breckenridge, and like, we're looking for the house, and everything's like 5 bedrooms, and he literally goes, Mike, I feel like this neighborhood is too nice for a Lumina. And so we get in the Lumina, and you know, I'm showing him how I think you should test drive a used car, which is just looking for signs of weakness. So I'm like, yeah, you floor it, you slam on the brakes, you floor it again, you take some corners hard, like you hit the brakes again. You're looking for things that seem janky. And like, the first red flag on the Lumina was that it was really hard to get into drive from park on the column shifter, which, I don't know if it's just a stretch shifter cable or whatever, but it was from this girl who looked like she just rolled out of a rave. She was like covered in glitter. She's like, well, it does have an iPod like an iPod plug on the CD deck, so that's pretty cool. It's like, yeah, but the windshield wiper squirters don't work. That was the other thing I warned him about. I'm like, Tomas, you will not be happy driving with your head out the window like Ace Ventura with no windshield wiper squirters from the tunnel all the way back to Copper Mountain. Ask me how I know, because the Saab didn't have windshield wiper squirters. But anyway, we test drove that. He didn't like it. We ended up test driving this Subaru here in Leadville that someone had told me about when I was working at the mine. And he's like, the keys are just in it. It's just parked at the Tabor. Like, help yourself. You can just test drive it. So I show up, and we started up, and we're looking at it, and like there's like an extra muffler in the back seat and shit. And we're cruising around Leadville. It was the only manual car we looked at, and he goes, Mike, this is kind of shitty. And I'm like, yeah, Tomas, for $600, it's gonna be shitty. Yeah, that's what you get. So he ended up calling me a couple days later, and he had bought this Montero, and he wanted to show it to me. He was buying it from a dude in Leadville, so he took it on a second test drive and came and picked me up. And I've never been so proud, right? Because this was still the beginning of his car buying journey. But he comes and picks me up, and the first thing he does when I get in the car is he just fucking guns it. And then he slams on the brakes, and then he guns it again. And he's like, yeah? I'm just like, fuck yeah. That is how you look for a used car in America. I've taught you well. So he ends up buying it for $1,200. And it came with a bed that you could put in the back or whatever. And I said to him, all right, bud, I think you made a good decision. But when you go to buy something else and get rid of this, I want first dibs on it, because I feel like it's a cool purchase. So turns out, a couple years later, Tomas had bought a Jeep Liberty, and true to his word, he calls me up. He's like, do you want to buy a Montero? And so I did. And when I bought it, it had a bad starter. So I literally went and gave him cash for it. I think it was $800 or something like that. And I started it by climbing underneath and banging the starter with a rock, and then just drove it home to Leadville. But when I got it home, it needed brakes, but the brakes, I got a quote, and it was every rotor and every brake pad. So it was $1,200. So I just never fixed it. But eventually the grinding sound kind of went away. So that was pretty cool. It comes a time when I realize that the Montero doesn't like driving to Copper Mountain where I work. So I should not have it, because if it doesn't like to go uphill, you shouldn't leave Leadville. So I listed for sale on Craigslist. Nobody wants it. I put it on Facebook Marketplace. It's sitting there. I'm like, come on, $600. Who wants this fucking piece of shit? Nobody wants it. And so finally, I had placed it on Craigslist using this burner flip phone that I use for emergencies, because me and my wife used to share a phone, and so we had the extra flip phone that we'd turn on when we were traveling in case we got separated. And I got the call on the flip phone on its last day of service, and it went like this. Hey, I'm at the Family Dollar. I think the Montero here with your number on it is the same one from your Craigslist ad. Is that correct? And I'm like, yeah, it sure is. And he's like, and you still only want $900 for it? And I'm like, yeah, that's all. And so I tell my wife that I'm going to sell the Montero, and she goes, well, don't bring them here. I'm like, good call. So I just take the title with me and drive over there. And these dudes are so high. Like, I don't have a lot of car buying advice for you, but before you purchase a car for less than $1,000, I'm not even saying don't get high. I'm not even saying don't do dabs. I'm just saying maybe don't do 10 fucking dabs before you go to look at it. These guys show up, and they are unbelievably high. And I'm just like, so yeah, this is a car, it's got 3 rows, primer gray hood. Doesn't really, like, what are you planning on doing with this? Like, because I could just see how stoked they were. They're like, oh, we got jobs in Silverthorne. We're going to drive it to work. And I'm like, well, just a brief caveat before I sell you this. It doesn't really love driving uphill. That's actually why I'm selling it. So perhaps before you make the decision to make it your sole source of transportation to your job, which entirely consists of up and downhill, you'd like to say, test drive this motherfucker a little bit? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. And I'm like, okay, well, do you want, like, I have time. Would you like to drive it, like, to the top of Fremont with me? And then we can come back? And they're like, oh no, that'll be unnecessary. So we literally drove 3 blocks up 5th Street, and then came down 4th Street, and then went back to the Family Dollar, and they're like, yeah, seems like it goes uphill really good. I'm like, okay, man. Sounds fantastic. And then I'm like looking around the car, it's like full of garbage and shit. Like, it literally had actual cigars from when I was doing community service at the dump that I had like thrown in there as if like I was ever gonna smoke cigars out of the garbage. I wouldn't do that. I only drink liquor out of the garbage. But I was like looking around and just like, I had the title with me already. I'm like, all right, cool, yeah, well, let's just do business really quick. And I like signed the title on the hood. And they give me $900, which is totally out of the ATM. It's like this wad this fat. And I'm just like, all right, man, well, let's see here. It looks like you guys get a tow hitch and a copper mountain backpack. These fucking cigars. They're like, oh, we might have to smoke those later to celebrate. I'm like, yeah, sure, bro. It's like, looks like you got like a fire extinguisher that expired 3 years ago. It's all yours, man. Here you go. Here's the keys. And once again, I can see you guys are super stoked. I hope this car lasts a really long time for you. But again, the ad says as is. If it breaks down, don't fucking call me. And 5 days later, I was driving home from Copper, and sure enough, it was broke down on the side of 91 by Climax. It was actually by the Lime station, if you want to be particular, but if you didn't work at Climax, that probably doesn't mean shit to you. So, I didn't think to check if it still had my license plates on it. I just let it go. So 2 months later, I get a call from the impound here in Leadville, and they said, we have your Montero here. Are you ever going to come get it? And I said, oh, that's not my Montero anymore. And they said, well, it's got your plates on it. And I'm like, shit, well, what do we need to square up here? They're like, well, can you get a Duke title for it from the DMV? I said, if I do I not owe you for storage? They're like, precisely. So I go down to the DMV and I get a Duke title because they never registered it for $9. And I go drop it off in the mailbox at the junkyard, and that was the end of the Montero. But anyway, I like those guys a lot better than Brokeback Josh, so I kind of felt bad about that one. But you give people a million fucking chances and they still want to buy your shit, so, such is life. But that's all I got to say about fucking hoopties, except for the brief anecdote that I missed. I gotta circle back to, is the Saab didn't have windshield wiper squirters, as I mentioned. And so, being a science man, I came up with a bunch of crafty ways to deal with it. Mostly, I figured out if you slow down to under 30, you can pour beer out the sunroof down the windshield and clear your vision. But eventually, I realized that sometimes slowing down to 30 isn't ideal. So I went and I bought a weed sprayer, and it would sit between me and the door, and so I could pump that bitch up and then reach it around to the windshield, and that's how I could, get the blue juice on it so I could see. The last thing, right, 2 more Saab stories, because I fucking love that car so much, and we went through so much together. But I used to work in Beaver Creek, and when I did, I was at the bank one day, Alpine Bank in Avon, and there was this lady in this brand new SL500 just staring at me like my existence was bothering her existence. And it could be because the Saab idled like, and it could be because I was afraid to turn it off because I didn't want to relocate the steak knife to restart it. But I rolled down the window and she was in a convertible, right? And I like motioned because it was summertime, like, you know, that I wanted to tell her something. And she looked at me all disgusted that I wanted to talk to her. And so I just said, "Hey bitch, jealous much?" And then I ran it into the curb and pushed the clutch in so I could bounce and roll back and drive away. And then when I floored it out of the parking lot, she got to hear that wonderful sound I described of the turbo hit with the exhaust bouncing between the bottom of the car and the pavement. Yeah, I showed her. And then the other part of that is also in Beaver Creek. I applied for a job as front desk at the Ritz-Carlton in Beaver Creek. And when I went in for my interview, I drove the Saab. I did not know this about the Ritz-Carlton in Beaver Creek, but I should have seen it coming. They only have valet parking. So for your job interview, they just validate your parking. So I literally rolled up to valet and told the dude, like, "Hey, I'm really fucking sorry, first of all. It starts with the steak knife that's just in there. If you don't fuck with it, it should stay lined up and you should be able to start it pretty easy. Park it on an angle because it doesn't have reverse. I'll see you later." And when I was leaving, he goes, "How's the interview?" And I'm like, "Oh, it went pretty good." And I go to tip him $20 and he goes, "Nah, man, save that shit for a new car." All right, yeah, that's the end of the sob story. Let's see. All right, here's a joke that probably nobody's heard in here anymore because I haven't told it yet. But I'm about to tell a couple jokes about my disabled little brother. Or retarded if you're not a total pussy about it. Anyway, his name is Patrick. He's a couple years younger than me. But one particular, he ambulates by crawling, which, like, is kind of hard. But one time, my parents brought him up here to Leadville to hang out with me, and we were doing the whole family thing. They were staying down at the Silver King Motel. Yeah, that's the name of it. And they couldn't find a good way to, like, corral him in the hotel room so he couldn't get out. And so, the way I used to bond with my family, particularly my father, was we would get piss fucking drunk together. And my little brother also doesn't talk. He makes noises, but, like, he doesn't communicate with words. And so I think he wanted to get out of the house or out of the hotel to go to my house to see my cat. That's all I could speculate, but he wanted out of there for some reason. And so he gets out and he's crawling down the hallway. And I'm trying to get him back to the hotel room. And I'm fucking shit-faced. So he's crawling, I'm slurring, and these people walk by and they just see me be like, Patrick, come on, man, you gotta come back to the hotel room. And he's just like, and so, like, I can only imagine that later they were recanting what they saw, and they were like, "Hey, man, his buddy was drunk, but that one guy was fucked up." Literally, like, one of my favorite things is, it doesn't really happen anymore because it's like, the people who work with him are better at, like, getting ahead of him, and his mobility has declined a little bit, which isn't great, but it, like, works better for the setting of my mom's house. But watching this dude go through the fridge is just like, I wish I could give so few fucks about other people. He just, like, he's on his knees and he opens the fridge door and he's just like, what the fuck is this? Fuck this shit. I don't know what that is. All right, American cheese. Like, I mean, God bless him. He doesn't know any better. But it's just like, if he could give fucks, like, I think he'd choose not to. That's just the vibe I get. But anyway, that's the brief bit about my little brother. I was getting some feedback from one of my friends the other day, and they said between your long, drawn out, detailed motherfucking jokes. You should tell shorter jokes. So I'm trying to break it up now. So, let's see. Why were there only... No, I can't tell that one. Jesus Christ. The mailman in my neighborhood is terrible. And I know because I'm always finding my shit when I'm rummaging through my neighbor's box. I was blacking out a lot lately, so I got a memory foam pillow. It doesn't help me remember shit, but I am acutely aware of the position my head was in when I passed out. Alright, I think that was a good little segue there. Let's see what we got here. Exploding extra golds. You guys are going to love this. Anybody ever drink the extra gold lagers? The cheapest Coors product known to man, except maybe Beer 30. Anybody remember fucking Beer 30? They used to sell it at the Leadville discount liquor store with a drive-thru, which I will always refer to as the liquor store. Mount Massive liquor store will forever be the new liquor store, even though it's been open for a fucking decade, because I got brand allegiance. But they used to sell these beers that are called Beer 30, and they came in a purple fucking can, and the 30 rack was like $18, and the logo for Beer 30 was a clock, and every number on the clock was 30, and it had a hand pointing to every number, and on it said, "Any time is the right time," which made me feel like so much less of a piece of shit when I crushed like 4 of those on the way to work to be a lift operator. So anyway, at some other job, I think I worked at a ski shop or something, but I got, you get tipped in beer. So I found myself the proud owner of an entire 30 rack of extra gold lager. And sometimes we get those cold snaps in Leadville, where it gets like minus 20 around New Year's and shit. Beer isn't supposed to be held at minus 20 for very long. I don't know if you guys have ever found that out the hard way, but there's a particular kind of thermal reaction when you deep freeze a beer that is different than when it just naturally freezes, like if you put it in the freezer by accident or, it's 5 degrees out. Anyway, minus 25 overnight. I got these things in the back of my truck. I'm driving to go ski Vail, and right when I drive over the bridge in Red Cliff, it sounded like a gun went off in the back of my car. Apparently, when you slowly thaw out beers that you've deep froze, they fucking explode. I was unaware. Now I'm acutely aware. But as the way beers sit in your 30 rack, as I got closer to Minturn, they went from single explosions to chain reactions as one blew up and triggered the second one to explode. So I'm turned around over the back seat trying to corral these exploding beers when, of course, I get pulled over for swerving in Minturn. So it was by State Patrol. He walked up to the window of my car to see me soaking wet with beer. He opened his mouth to ask me what the hell was going on. I presume I never got to find out. And when he leaned into the car, 5 beers exploded in a chain reaction, showering us both in extra gold. His reaction was to do this. Told me to have a good day, walked back to his cop car, and drove the fuck away. Amazing. Yes, right. Okay. So let's see. That leads right into That's Not How It Folds. So, once upon a time, I went to see Widespread Panic at Red Rocks. I'm not even the biggest jam band fan, but someone insisted we got tickets. They were like $100. And I was like, this time, we do Red Rocks the way you're supposed to do Red Rocks. So we stopped at Evergreen Walmart on the way down the hill. And at Evergreen Walmart, I bought a gazebo for tailgating. My intention was to tailgate with it, fold it back up, put it in its original packaging, and return it the next day. So, I purchased the cheapest gazebo they have, the 8x8 Ozark Trail gazebo with the blue top. And it was like $80 or whatever. I didn't really care because I was going to return it. But we go and we tailgate, and since I was trying to do it properly, after me and my wife rochambeaued for who was going to be the designated driver, I lost. So I decided I would eat some mushrooms. we're getting ready to go into the show because it's getting to be that time, which means I'm also starting to trip. And my mission is to fold up the gazebo, put it in the original packaging, and secure it so we can go in the show, and the next day I can return it. My wife sees this. She used to sell salsa at fairs, so she, especially when she's been drinking, is an expert on folding up a tent. She tells me, no, Mike, that's not how you do it. You have to walk it in. You have to walk it in. You have to walk it in. And then she leans on this thing, and I see it break in like 8 fucking places. So then my objective immediately changed from folding it up into its original packaging to, can I wad this bitch up and fit it in the back of our Jeep so we can go in the fucking show? So I'm in the process of stepping on it and bending it and generally wadding it into a ball. And these 2 hippies walk by who are tripping way fucking harder than me. And they look at it and they look at me, and one of them says, dude, I don't think that's how it folds. And I was just like, dude, I think you're right, and proceed to like break it in 5 more places. I got it wadded up and I put it in the back of the Jeep. And so the next day I have this dilemma. It also, I guess, kind of important anecdote, the receipt blew the fuck away across the Red Rocks parking lot. So I go to Walmart the next day and I wheel this thing in like this fucking geriatric fucking metal spider hanging out of a shopping cart. And I'm at customer service and I go, excuse me, I purchased this gazebo yesterday and I was trying to fold it up per the directions, and as you can see, I think there's a mechanical flaw in it because it didn't fold. And unfortunately, since I didn't, the receipt blew away, I really don't have anything for you. And they were like, well, there's a Walmart, so, well, they actually didn't talk like that because it was Evergreen Walmart, but we'll go with it. Well, there's a Walmart, so once a year you can return something with no receipt, but it has to be an exact exchange. And so I'm like, that's cool, so I just have to get the same one? They're like, yeah, if you can find it. I'm thinking like, well, there's 75 fucking gazebos here yesterday. I don't see what the problem's going to be. Well, upon visiting the gazebo section of Evergreen Walmart, I don't know what the fuck transpired between when I was there and when I went back. Someone must have had like a mini Burning Man or a fucking gazebo party or some shit. But there was literally, swear to God, 1 fucking gazebo left out of all of them. And it was the most expensive one. It was like $250. It was the Easy Up. It had a white top. It was like 13 by 13. And so I said, fuck it. It's Walmart. Let's give it a shot. So I dragged this thing up to the front of the store. And I'm at customer service. And I'm standing next to the shopping cart I parked there with the one with the blue top hanging out like a fucking spider. And they go, is that the same one? I'm like, well, shit, as far as I can tell, it's the exact same one. And they just print me out a receipt, and I throw it over my shoulder, and I start leaving. And right about then, my wife's walking in, and she goes, that's not the same one. I'm like, start the car, let's go. And I still have that gazebo, and it's fucking awesome. Oh, yeah, that was a great one. Yeah, let's see. So, no, not that one. All right, I'll just go into the next bit. I don't have a quick joke for this one. Oh, yeah, I do, actually. Okay, so the neighbor across the street runs an Airbnb, and he convinced my wife like 3 years ago to clean it for him for extra money. And then all of a sudden, for the first time ever, I get bitched at for not helping clean my house. And I'm like, God damn it, neighbor, get your own wife. Okay, so the next one is going to be Critterland and Liftoffs. Perfect. So, as you can maybe tell, or I maybe alluded to briefly during me telling jokes here, I used to be, well, I still am an alcoholic. I used to have a pretty significant drinking problem, but part of my favorite part of having a drinking problem was drinking at work at every job I fucking had. So I had a job at Copper Mountain, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with at the tubing hill at Copper Mountain. They have all these animals that are called Critterland. And basically they're mashups of 2 animals. So there's Alaroo, alligator kangaroo, there's ducktopus, basically like DJ Chris Landry and the dude in marketing who ended up getting fired for the trail maps that had the joke about peeing your pants when you heard it snowed. Like those guys just got really high and made up these animal mashups. But anyway, there were sticker packs for this shit. And so, being frugal like I am, I had a fifth of Kentucky Deluxe, or not a fifth, I'm sorry, a pint of Kentucky Deluxe that I would take to work with me every day, and it was covered in those stickers. So we basically just had this code amongst me and people who knew me at work for drinking whiskey at work, particularly super cheap gut rot whiskey like Kentucky Deluxe, as Critterland. And so it would go something like this: "Hey Ham," that's my last name, "do you have any Critterland left?" And then I would say, "Are you fucking kidding? It's 9:30 in the goddamn morning. I haven't had Critterland left for an hour." But yeah, so one time, actually what led to me getting fired at Copper Mountain was I was driving to work, and there was this fifth of Kentucky Deluxe. I was in the Jeep that would back up on its own. Yeah, I was driving that to work, and the Jeep Grand Cherokee has the big plush seats, and something was poking me. And a fifth that I had completely misplaced and didn't know existed was just like jamming me in the back. And I pulled it out, and I was literally like, "Well, hello, beautiful. Guess you're coming to work with me today." And I managed to get the single most guest complaints in one day via email of any Copper Mountain employee in history at that point. I don't know if anybody's broken the record or if there's any contenders out there, but go for it. If you do, my hat is off to you, sir. But I got 6 or 7 in one day because I was just scanning tickets, pissed drunk, and it was during USASA, which is like the future of X Games, children athletes. And I was just saying, ridiculous things to them and their coaches, so they sent nasty emails. But what ended up happening at Copper was during the summer before I got fired, I tore my ACL at work jumping on the bungee trampoline before we started. And yeah, I actually, as being exclusively an alcoholic that didn't smoke weed, I was able to pass my drug test for workers' comp. So like, Copper bought me an entirely new knee replacement, but the funny side effect of being on workers' comp during the summertime is they don't always have work for you, so they have to find you odd jobs. So I worked, I don't know if you know that there was a Club Med in where employee housing is now at Copper. So there used to be a disco in the basement. Everybody knows about that. But what everybody doesn't know is where the records from that disco went. And there was this cocksucker that worked there who was always giving me shit to do. And one day he asked me if I could alphabetize all the records. I'm not very good at alphabetizing. He also told me, as a caveat to that, I could keep any of the records that I wanted. And so I said, "Does that include all of them?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Fuck alphabetizing." And I went and got a luggage card. And so I loaded all 2,000 into the back of the same Jeep.
Oh my God.
And so I was excited, right? Because old vinyl's cool. Well, old vinyl from the Club Med disco isn't the sort of vinyl that's that cool. So I didn't even have a record player. I stopped at the thrift store on the way home and got, luckily they actually had one of those suitcase record players with a built-in amplifier. It was $5. I'm like, shit, I need a DJ name. I'm going to be DJ $5. So I get this thing and I go in my dirt floor basement. I used to rent this terrible Bill Corn house, and it had a trapdoor basement that just had dirt and like shit from people's weed grows and just like all sorts of like concrete blocks and stuff. So we sat in the basement and we had 2 piles. We had a "this sucks" pile, which was like this fucking tall, and we had the keeper pile that was like this high. And so for a while, I was just like, we'd throw one on the record player and we'd be like, "Garbage!" and just like whang it against the wall, and it would break because it was concrete. But yeah, I think there was like 20 records out of the whole thing that were probably worth saving. And I still have one of them, and it's Jim Carrey from The Mask, Cuban Pete, the single. such a banger. If I had a record player, I would play that shit. But I ended up selling the rest of them to the Dylan record store for like $50, and I was like, hey, just if you find something worthwhile in there, just call me and tell me about it. I don't even want any additional compensation. I just want to know that I like overlooked something. Anywho, the other thing that came about from me working in all these different departments was I worked in the uniform department, which was where they print the name tags. You know, everybody at Copper has the name tag, and it says like my passion is, and it says their name and everything. Well, when I was left unsupervised, I made a copious amount of celebrity name tags. So I had Charlie Sheen, and his passion was winning. This was during like the Flaming Torpedoes of Truth tour, so it was very pointed to have that name tag while I was scanning tickets. It was a great way for me and 50-year-old women to like share a cocaine joke casually at work. It's like, sir, are you? They'd be like, are you really Charlie Sheen? And I'd be like, well, I really am winning. And I had Chuck Norris, but I got written like up positively. They did this recognition thing, and my supervisor was dumb enough. She's like, oh yeah, Mike's great. He always has these celebrity name tags. He's always the life of the party. And they made her confiscate all of them, so I got to keep like one. Anywho, I ended up working at the go-kart track, which was the best fucking job ever, because all I had to do was smoke cigarettes, race go-karts on Percocet, and steal the fucking money. Oh, Jesus, there's a wall there. So, yeah, basically, like, they used to do something called, like, $5 re-rides, which is where, like, it's like, oh, you paid $15 to ride the go-karts. So, you know, if you want to go again, you could just tip us $5. And I mentioned that, and, like, every single fucking pussy I worked with was like, oh, no, man, that's how you get in trouble. We don't want to get in any trouble. We made $9 an hour. Except for, like, me and one dude who worked there, and I was like, hey, man, should we just steal all the money then? Because I'm in charge of selling the tickets. And so we changed the sound on the gun you scan the tickets with, so the sound that confirmed your ticket was good was the same sound as the one that said your ticket was bad. And we just sold the same tickets all day long. It was great, because I went from making $9 an hour to fucking $300 an hour. It was a great pay raise. And yeah, that was fan-fucking-tastic. So that was my experience working at Copper Mountain. Don't tell your friends, especially if they still work there. Let's see what we got here. Oh, Frontier Airlines. Yeah, pardon me for a second. Do some crowd work. More people came in? Holy shit, there's 6 people in the audience. I am killing it at this fucking comedy game. Let's go! What the fuck is up, Leadville? This is an even better turnout than my AA meeting last night. No, just kidding. There was only 5 people there. All right, so I'm in an abusive relationship with Frontier Airlines. And once in a while, this is how it goes. I have a shit experience. I say no more. I'm going to quit you, Frontier Airlines. And then they say, we got flights to Vegas for $39. And I'm like, oh, well, fuck. I mean, you were a pretty nice airline. I guess we could try again. So, the last time I swore off Frontier Airlines, I was flying to Cancun for my birthday. And I got the worst seat on the plane. FYI, when you're picking your seat, if you're in the very last row, the window seat has no window. Let that sink in really quick. So I'm getting on the plane, and since you have to go to the Frontier Airlines dungeon at DIA, it literally looks like either, I can't remember from my childhood, but either the Fort Collins DMV or the Fort Collins drunk tank. I'm not sure which one it is, but it's one of the two. And so you walk up ramps onto the plane. One goes to the front, one goes to the back. So I got sat immediately, but I opened the overhead compartment because I'd really like to put my tiny backpack in there and net myself a little bit of leg room. And I hear, sir, you can't put that in there. That's a personal item. Oh, that little bitty backpack? Yeah, that has to go under your seat. I said, really? I mean, there's plenty of room. Nope, that's going to have to go under your seat. And I was instantly appalled at the way I was being treated. And usually on Frontier Airlines, you know, you and your fellow $39 passengers, there's kind of like a mob mentality amongst you. You have like this kind of fuck them, we're all on the same team mindset. At least that's what I'm feeling. And so I'm watching intently. And 20 rows up, I see her put someone else's tiny backpack into the overhead bin. And so since I think I have numbers on my side, I yell from the back of the plane, hey, I saw that tiny carry-on in the overhead bin. That's fucking bullshit. Well, she walked back 20 rows, got right in my face and said, excuse me, sir, did you say something? And of course I was like, no, I didn't say anything. Why would I say anything? That didn't seem like a good idea. I'm just a guy here trying not to get thrown off the plane. Why would I say something? And so she went about her flight, but the whole time I was saying I was going to quit Frontier Airlines again. But I get back home, and it's time to plan the boys' trip to Vegas, and unfortunately, on a reputable actual airline, there was no seats available, or no flights available that would get in at the time I needed to be. It was a 4-day trip, 3 days really, and so if I got there in the evening, that was a whole day of golf I would miss out on, which would be terrible. But what I've never seen before is, like, I've seen Frontier Airlines try to hustle you into the upcharge while you're booking your ticket, like, hey, you want to pick a seat? But what I didn't know is they would email you trying to hustle you later on. So I get this email and it's like, did you know that for $39 you could sit in the front row? $39 or more. There was a slider bar. You could bid on it. I was like, does anybody actually bid on the seat, or are we all just sliding the bar to the far left? I assume that was the case. So for $39, you can sit in Upfront Plus, which is their ghetto version of first class. For $19 or more, you could sit in the first 3 rows. And for the low price of $9, you can sit in an exit row. And I'm not sure how I feel about that for safety, but that was the deal. So I slid all the bars over and bid on it. And sure enough, a day later, it was like, congratulations. We've charged you $39 and upgraded you to Upfront Plus. You also get a free carry-on. I was like, fuck around, a free carry-on. But I didn't take it because I figured that as soon as I came back, I wouldn't get the upgrade, and then my free carry-on would be $75. So I go to get on the plane, and I go to put my bag in the overhead, but the first overhead says not for storage. So I go to the second overhead, and I slide my bag in, and I hear, sir, that's a personal item. You're going to have to put that under your seat. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure how to put it under the seat in front of me because I'm sitting in the first row. And she said, oh, you're sitting in the first row. Why didn't you say so? And I'm like, well, I've never sat in the first row on Frontier. I didn't know that it came with special privileges. And she goes, oh, yeah, let me take that for you. And then she put it in the forbidden overhead bin. So the moral of the story is, Frontier Airlines doesn't give a fuck about you, but for $39, they will suck your dick.
Ooh. I think it's more than 39.
Well, to actually suck your dick.
Oh, yeah.
To metaphorically suck your dick. Like the comparison between their regular customer service and placing my carry-on, like that, metaphorically sucking my dick, to be clear. All right, next we have Ride the Dolphin. So, the first Frontier Airlines flight I mentioned was to Cancun, and my wife asked me what I wanted to do for my 40th birthday, and I said, I want to go to fucking Mexico, because I always want to go to Mexico, because that's where you can buy prescription drugs. And as a recovering alcoholic, that's the closest I can get to drinking without fucking ruining my life. To be determined. So, basically, my plan was to turn 40 as a complete liability. upon reviewing the vacation, I was successful. At any rate, we fly into Cancun and we go to Playa del Carmen, and they saw me coming. Well, at least they saw the gringo that I am coming. But every pharmacy there is open till like 12 p.m. And I find myself, buying my list of supplies to come back with. And I'm looking for cigars. And in the process of buying cigars, I get roped into buying a whole bunch of fentanyl cocaine. And so my wife's at the beach on my birthday, and I'm trying to snort this whole 8-ball of fentanyl cocaine. And the reason I suspect it wasn't really cocaine is because we went to this restaurant afterwards, which is my favorite restaurant in the whole world. It's called Harry's. Definitely highly recommended. They fold your napkin and put it back on your seat. If you get up, you get your own busboy for your table. And I ate a 28-ounce fucking steak. Now, I don't think you could do that on cocaine. But the side effect of this was my wife's a planner. There's all sorts of fun shit that's planned. And we have, we're riding dune buggies. We're going snorkeling. And if you haven't nodded off snorkeling, I wouldn't recommend it. But thankfully I had my Temu full face snorkel that doesn't allow water in. So when I started to nod off snorkeling, it just kept me from breathing. And then I woke up and didn't die. So that was pretty fucking cool. Anyway, enough about being a complete liability in Mexico. I guess the key point of this particular story is that if you didn't know, any given drug that you need a prescription for in the U.S., Viagra, benzos, tramadol, you can bring back 50 of any of them without a prescription through customs. So what I was shooting for was 50 Xanax, 50 Klonopins, and 50 Valiums. But the problem is they sell this shit in weird numbers. So I found myself eating way too many. So I had this moment in the Cancun airport where I had 2 Klonopins and 2 Xanny bars left. And they both put me over the 50 limit for each particular one. And so I'm looking at them and I'm like, well, I don't think I should eat both of them. But, maybe 2 out of 4. So I picked Xanax because it's got a shorter half-life for all you science people. So anyway, so I left the 2 Klonopins on the toilet tank. I ate the 2 Xanaxes, and then my wife's flight got delayed. I mean, my flight was delayed too, but I fucking time traveled. She went back and forth through security 3 times in 4 hours to smoke cigarettes. I just slept on a bench that was round and watched the luggage. So when I got back to America though, and the whole point was I was ready to go through customs, and they were gonna say anything to declare, and I was gonna say, yeah, I have 50 Klonopins, 50 Xanaxes, and 50 Valiums. And they were going to be like, wow, sir, you did your research. I commend you for being a piece of shit. That was how I, pictured it in my head. But how it actually worked was we got to customs after my 4-hour nap in the airport and 3-hour nap on the plane. And they said, anything to declare besides the typical sweets or tequila? And I said, no, sir. And that's all it took. So that was pretty sweet. But when we went to Cancun the previous time for my wife's birthday, we went to a water park that had an open bar to swim with the dolphins. And I thought that was a pretty sweet amenity, an open bar at a place where the primary activity is swimming. But, that's Mexico for you. So we're walking in. Our appointment to swim with the dolphins is at around 10:30. It's 9:30, we walk by the dolphin enclosure, and we see one of the dolphins jump out of the water. And holy shit, is that a big mammal. So I become nervous. So what do? I go to the open bar and get my typical order for when I'm nervous at open bar in Mexico. That would be 3 tequila shots and 2 beers. I was able to just finish my drinks in time to go to orientation for swimming with the dolphins, where they explicitly said in the first 5 minutes that under no circumstances before swimming with the dolphins are you supposed to consume any alcohol. So I just kept that to myself. Then, the second most important piece of information they gave me, or at least the most important to me, you gotta love the Mexican upsell, is they said, okay, you've already paid to swim with the dolphins, but did you know that you could pay more money to fucking ride one? I was like, holy shit, shut the fuck up and take my money. So I give them my Discover card, I pay for me and my wife to ride the dolphin, and like, have you guys ever seen the meme of Jesus riding on the back of the great white shark with the AR-15? Well, anyway, picture it. That's what I was picturing for Ride the Dolphin. I should have known when it was called dorsal toe that maybe that wasn't how it was going to go down. But when they describe how you get ready, and this is at the end of the dolphin experience, they say you float in the water with your life jacket, you straddle your legs like this, and you wait for the dolphin to come by and then tow you. I missed that part. So the dolphin rides underneath me, and I grab the fin, and I sit on it. And the trainer goes, not like horse, Mike, not like horse. And that dolphin was fucking pissed. Despite our trust issues that we developed in that particular moment, he came by and we successfully did the dorsal toe, which was pretty fucking lame for $85 US. At any rate, don't let yourself be fooled by the Mexican upsell. I definitely should have paid for the 2 dolphins pushing me 1 by each foot. But we live and learn. Let's see. Go-kart track. I told that one. This one's called Dildos at the Race Series. I don't know if anybody was privy to the fact that last summer during WNBA games they were getting canceled for spectators because people were throwing dildos onto the court because of their disdain for women's sports or whatever sort of reason they were. Well, we were talking about that and decided that maybe we should normalize throwing dildos at anything that we don't agree with. So this was the week after the Leadville bike race, going into the running 100, and it was Wednesday, and it was like, oh shit, we can make a statement here. Hurry the fuck up and get on Amazon. So I'm trying on Amazon, shopping for dildos that I'm going to use as ammunition, and I'm going to purchase one. Well, I'm actually looking for a deal. So I find a deal that is 4 for $20, $5 a piece. And then I made sure that the shipping would get them to my house by Friday when the race expo started, and they did. I've never been so excited to see the mailman bringing me dicks. We get the box, we take it inside, I open one, and I stick it on the counter with the suction cup, and I say, holy shit, Amazon, for $5, that's a lot of cock. I'm impressed. So I figure we should inscribe these things with some sort of message before we cast them into the expo with all the people in them. So on one side I write LRS, Leadville Race Series, equals dildos. And on the other side, I write go home with 20 exclamation points. It was only then that I realized that I watch a lot of true crime, and due to the tacky nature of said dildos, my fingerprints were all over them. I then considered that throwing one potentially was assault, so I needed to scrub it off. I got the Clorox wipe, and I cleaned that fucker off. And I re-inscribed it wearing a glove. I was trying to consider what I should use in terms of a mechanism of delivery. And I was like, well, these are a bunch of people who have already trained to run 100 miles that have yet to run 100 miles. So fucking with them and trying to flee on foot is probably not a good option. I also know that boxers run down the street as part of their training, so some of these cocksuckers can probably punch really hard. I ended up deciding on the Segway that I used to play golf with as a means of delivery. So what I did was I put on a right-handed golf glove, I stuck this fucker in my hoodie pocket, I rode by, I didn't make eye contact, I threw it over my head and I went, "Yaha!" and I rode away. I had an illusion of staring these people down as I did it, but once you have the dildo in your hand and you're considering throwing it at a group of people, you don't feel as tough or standoffish anymore. Reality kind of sets in. So the joke may be on me because I don't know if anybody even fucking noticed. Short joke. Did you guys hear about the two peanuts that walked into a bar? One was assaulted. Yes, thank you. All right, the next one is called garbage liquor.
Garbage liquor!
Yeah, everybody loves some garbage liquor. Well, at least everybody who knows what fucking garbage liquor is loves some garbage liquor. Actually, usually when I tell this bit, I never mention the part that I actually, before I ever was privy to what the fuck garbage liquor was, I actually drank some as part of a birthday celebration that my friends that all worked at the place I ended up working at later came by my house. They had all these shooters of Courvoisier that had come through, and they furnished me with it as a birthday present. So actually, the first time I got blacked out on garbage liquor wasn't even in the context of this story. I just put it together the other day. But if you haven't heard me tell the story, it probably is an unnecessary anecdote. But anyway, once upon a time, after getting fired from Copper, I had to find a job, and so I worked for the Eagle Valley Temp Service doing remedial jobs at different places. The most primary of these jobs turned out to be working at the Eagle County Mechanized Recycling Facility, also known as a MRF. It's worth mentioning, for the context of this story, that when I was in kindergarten, I was diagnosed as tactilely defensive because I didn't want to finger paint. I don't really know if that's an actual thing, but I do know that I was a dirty kid that didn't want to wash his hands, and I'd seen Bob Ross paint on TV with a brush. So I think I was just ahead of my time. At any rate, it goes without saying, given that diagnosis, that I have always been kind of uncomfortable touching icky shit. Well, when you work in an establishment where the job in question is completely sorting garbage, you end up touching some icky shit. But luckily, on my first day, me and my homie who got me the job were working on the belt in pre-sort, which is before the glass crusher, as if anybody gives a shit the layout of the recycling facility for the context of this joke. But that's where it is. And he grabbed a bottle of liquor off the belt. And I said, "You just drink liquor out of the garbage?" And he goes, "Hey man, we're not animals. There's 3 rules. First rule is at least a third full. Second rule, does it smell like piss? Okay, so there's 2 rules. But at any rate, we start drinking it. If anybody comes, we can just throw it into the glass crusher. It bears mentioning that everybody who works at this job either works for the county, is us too, or is in jail. So, needless to say, there was plenty of garbage liquor for me. There was also an incident that happened where all the people who work there in jail got sent back to jail for peeing hot UAs for smoking weed. My friend that worked there with me got another job that didn't suck as much, and so I went in 3 days from being the most green employee to being the most senior employee in one foul swoop. They had a culture there that was really fun for me, where they would pick one employee that they let get away with what they wanted, and then they treated all the other employees like they were second-class citizens. I don't think I would have been as into that if I wasn't the one with the preferential treatment, but it worked fucking fantastic. So we would have all sorts of shenanigans. the bottom line is drinking the garbage liquor. On day one, I was afraid to touch the bags of garbage because I didn't like touching icky shit. But by day 3, I was wading dick deep through garbage against the safety guidelines, looking for more garbage liquor with which to lubricate myself. I was also making moonshine at the time, which if you're an alcoholic, don't make moonshine as a hobby. It doesn't work out.
Hey, cheers!
Yeah, cheers to that. But, not recommended. So we would fuck with people on the other side. We'd throw shit at each other. It was a really good time. But the bottom line is, before these people leave, they have to hear the punchline. Drinking the garbage liquor turned me from the pussy I was into the man I am today, goddammit.
Cheers!
So I work in short-term rentals, and we get some interesting people. Everybody who comes on ski vacation is so smart, and they're all so fucking nice, and none of them have any unreasonable demands. They're just really salt-of-the-earth people. I love all of them. But unfortunately, the other day, like literally yesterday, I got a call from my boss, and he said, "Have you been looking at this particular report?" And I said, "Yes. Do you want..." I knew I was going to get talked to about something because he started by saying, "First of all, I'd like to say congratulations on your score for owner approval. It's very high." And I was like, "Ooh, is this going to be one of those compliment sandwich situations?" It was. So he said to me, "Unfortunately, you have the lowest average service score of anybody in your position under my control." And my first thought was like, oh, fuck. Does that mean we're going to have to stop being rude to the customers? So I snapped into action. He says, "Do you have a plan to fix it?" I came up with a multi-tiered plan to fix it, including a contracted employee to sit in the office where people just walk in and see a bunch of lockboxes and go, "Oh, fuck these people." So after implementing said plan, I figured out that we built enough additional customer service into this that I think I can still fucking be rude to all the guests. So that was a close one. We do outsource all our customer service to another country that I can't pronounce that's very far away. Conveniently, that switch occurs right at 4 o'clock when people are checking in and actually need help. So that is super convenient for the people finding condos. But they get put to like Sri Lanka or fucking Hmong or some shit. And it's funny because there's kind of a language barrier between the people answering the phone and the people here. And so I get these tickets that everything comes across in a text message. And it'll just be in like super broken English. And I'm not trying to language shame anybody, but like there's certain nuances to like differences in language that are important. Like the difference between heat and air conditioning. I got one the other day that literally said the air conditioning didn't work. And so I told the person on the phone that they could call the guest back and tell them that it's 29 degrees outside, so they can just open their door. I only found out later that what they meant by air conditioning was the heat didn't work and they were uncomfortably cold inside their condo. So I just love that this person had to call them back and tell them that the local manager suggested that because their heat didn't work and they were uncomfortably cold, that it's 29 degrees outside, just open your fucking door. Yeah, I'm sure they loved it. They were like, fuck me. But generally speaking, it's pretty fun. Good gig. Let's see here. Next bit is shopping carts. I don't know if anybody else grew up in suburbia. Yeah, shopping carts and shopping centers, outlet malls and such. But anyway, the bottom line is a 70-mile-an-hour shopping cart is fucking funny. And you might not appreciate that until you see one. But the important part of getting one to 70 miles an hour is how you do it. You basically roll up in your car, You drive and your buddy hangs out the window, or your buddy drives and you hang out the window, but you just hang on to the shopping cart and you drive as fast as you can through the parking lot, and then you slam on the brakes when you let it go. And that's how you get a 70-mile-an-hour shopping cart. And they do really funny things when they hit shit. Until you've seen a shopping cart flip 8 times in the air, 30 feet high, I just don't think you appreciate how fucking funny that is after you smoke 10 blunts. But it is. And the pinnacle of the shopping cart experience was there was a Pizza Hut. And the Pizza Hut parking lot was next to the Walmart parking lot. And on the other side was a big hill and a Ford dealership. So if you drove 80 miles an hour and let go of the shopping cart, it would hit the curb, flip over the 20-foot high barbed wire fence into the Ford dealership, and set off car alarms. And that was fucking fantastic. All right, we'll wrap this up here with, let's see, how should we end it?
With a heckler.
With a heckler? Go for it. Should we do some crowd work?
Yeah.
All right, sweet. Where are you from?
From Mississippi.
From Mississippi. Fuck yeah. All right.
Better.
I think I've been to Mississippi. I've certainly been to Kentucky. And this lady, when I was...
know how Kentucky's much richer than Mississippi.
Okay, perfect. Well, the context of this story is how retarded they are in Kentucky, so we can just extrapolate from there.
Go.
All right, so we went to the liquor store, and these really nice dudes, my wife had a sunburn, and they said, well, you gotta put mustard on it. It takes the sting out of it. And so then they handed me a paper bag, and I was confused whether the paper bag was to collect the mustard from across the street from McDonald's or just to apply the mustard to my sunburned wife. I wasn't really sure, but they were super nice people. But we went to this outfit that had fucking kangaroos and shit, and the pregnant 17-year-old that worked there was, she grew tired of our line of questioning because they had underwater cave tour, like boating cave tours, but they were all closed because the water level was too high. And the thing was about it, after she grew tired of it, she said the most Kentucky thing I had heard on the entire trip, where she slid the piece of paper over and said, here's you a map. And I was like, here's me a map? Here's you a book. All right.
That's got nothing to do with Mississippi.
Yeah, I know. I don't have a Mississippi story. I'm trying to cross off all the states. I just haven't found a reason to go there. I mean, I've been to Alabama. I mean, my southern geography's terrible. It just goes from like North Carolina to like Florida, man. But yeah, I'll make it someday. I guess that was a bad one if I haven't been to all 50 states with a heckler. But what brings you to Leadville?
I build plants.
You build plants?
Yeah.
Oh. Most people moved to Leadville to grow plants, but that was at least 10 years ago.
I'm fixing the old shit.
Fuck yeah. All right, well, cool. I don't really have anything mean to say about that, but thanks for being the one fucking member of my audience that's new. I can really feel myself killing it at the comedy game as my following grows and grows.
I got one to add for you.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between people from Mississippi and Arkansas and Alabama.
Okay.
There's a very clear one. So you have to ask questions. What is it?
What would the difference be?
I only sleep with my family members. I don't marry them. Because
you only sleep with your family members, you don't marry them. That's fantastic. And actually, I do have a friend from Arkansas, and he's afraid to fly. And he texted me the other day saying something, and I was on a plane, and like he was like, hey man, how come you don't answer when I call? And I just texted him back, like, listen you slack-jawed inbred motherfucker, I'm on an airplane right now, which you're afraid to do. I'll call you when I land.
I can live up to that one. I agree with you.
Fuck yeah. All right, so we're gonna finish it off with the night audit story, which is kind of like work and drinking adjacent. Yeah, if I ever have a Netflix special, I'm gonna call it Resume, because clearly I'm employable as shit. So basically, I found myself working the overnight shift at this Holiday Inn. And what initially started as just being an addiction to a particular arcade machine that was inside the arcade out of two machines. It was called Point Blank. It was a Japanese speed shooting game, and it only cost $0.25. But I was addicted to this shit, and I would literally come in, bum rush all the paperwork, and play this game from 11:30 at night till 5 in the morning when the newspapers got delivered. And it became like a $20 a night habit at 25 cents a game. So I had to do something. So I got a sewing kit, and I got a quarter and a piece of tape, and I was trying to, I was doing that at the front desk too, but only in the back. But I was doing that bit and the quarter got stuck, and I was like, oh fuck, the quarter's stuck, and I hit it, and it gave me a credit, and that was fantastic. I literally played that game for free for the entirety of it being in the arcade until they took it away and put some stupid Buck Hunter game in there, which was okay, but not nearly as satisfying. But that's not the important part. It was once I didn't play this game all night, I started looking for shit to do. And TSA used to stay at this particular Holiday Inn when it was wintertime, and I made friends with a bunch of TSA people, which was kind of cool. We'd have friends that would come into town, and they would ask questions like, hey, you think you guys could go to our gate with us when we're flying out? And I'm like, I don't know, let's see what happens. And we go in, and then the guy daps me up like a bouncer, and he's like, yeah, you want to go to the gate with him, right? Yeah, fuck yeah, Mike, go ahead. And so that was pretty cool. But one of the TSA guys was really good at picking the locks to the lobby liquor cabinets that had all the booze storage for the bar next door in it. So we got a bottle of Crown once and drank it in the hot tub, and that was a pretty good time. So it got me thinking, like, he just used a paperclip to do it. You think I could use a paperclip to do it? The answer turned out to be yes. So one night, I'm watching Beer Fest on the lobby TV, and I ended up putting the paperclip in, and I opened it, and it was full of Patron. I was like, holy shit, tequila, that's fucking great. And then I'm like, wait a second though, I'm no dummy. I can't just take the liquor and leave the cabinet unlocked. They'll know it was me for sure. So I have to be able to lock it. So I stick the paperclip back in, and it locks. And then I'm like, game the fuck on. We had a roommate at the time that worked the morning shift at a coffee shop. So I was coming home from the night shift when she was leaving in the morning. And I came home with 2 pillowcases just clanking together. And she goes, what the fuck's in there? And I'm like, oh, well that's party liquor. And so, yeah, that I didn't realize until later when I was a bartender what a dick move that was. Because by taking all the top shelf liquor, what I had effectively done is made it look like all the bartenders were giving out free drinks into infinity for extra tips. So that was kind of a dick move, especially since they were my friends, because they gave me my drinks for free. But the pinnacle of that job was literally when I almost ran into a guest on my friend's BMX bike, riding it down the upstairs hallway drunk at 2 in the morning. Luckily, hotel doors open in, not out, because that would have been a tough explanation for the morning shift when I had to explain why I ran into somebody at 2 in the morning on a bicycle in the hallway of the hotel I was in charge of safety at. I guess the other funny part of that particular job was I used to pack a lunch and I would take a couple beers in it, because if you're going to take a nap on the lobby couch in the middle of the night, it does pay to have a couple beers with you. So I had a 24-ounce beer that I had wrapped a sheet of printer paper around, put a piece of tape on it, and wrote "not beer," which was funny when I was drinking it during the night shift, but less funny after my 2 days off when I came into work and the 2 managers pulled it out and questioned me about it. They said, Mike, what is this? And I said, well, it says it's not beer. And they were like, well, whose is it? And I tried to make up a bunch of excuses of whose it was, but it was obvious that it was mine. And finally, I said, okay, I'm sorry, that is indeed my beer, but you have to forgive me for not admitting it was mine right at the beginning, because it looks super unprofessional that I was drinking beer when I was in charge of the entire hotel. And the GM was this old German lady, and she goes, I understand, but this can never happen again. And yeah, that's actually probably the only job I had between when I was 19 and when I was 30 years old that gave me a reference and I didn't get fired from. Anyway, if you want, my resume is on the table out front. No, I'm just kidding, but yeah. Thanks, Leadville. Have a good evening.
Let me buy you a beer.
I don't drink.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Oh, Jesus Christ.